Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review pre-match build-up podcast. I'm Jonny McFarlane and I am joined by Joshua Barrie, who's not lost in La Mancha, but live in La Mancha. He is at it's a training ground facility within a larger complex, the Manga club. Josh is there at the sort of training ground stroke stadium for this one. I don't think there's any other fans there, Josh. Is it simply just the players of both sides and the coaching staff and then a couple of journalists?
As things stand, Jonny, is not many people here at all. It's kind of a smallish stand. People can see a video on social media if they want to kind of give a bit of a view of the pitch. Pitch looks really good. I have to say, Hertha Berlin have been out at kind of same complex training. Obviously, they've had a slightly long. So expect this to be an interesting game. This is the first time that Philippe Clement's had a bit of time with his players, and let's see if there's anything different within his team.
Yeah, indeed. You broke off a little bit there, Josh, but you came back. So fingers crossed that we remain connected to you. Certainly the video is looking quite good at the moment. So let's just touch on the team. Rabea Matondo in goal. You've got Ridvan left back, defying all the transfer speculation that's flying around. We'll touch on that in a minute. Leon Balogun on the left side of the fence, John Souttar on the right, James Tavernier at right back. Central midfield, anchormen and Nico Raskin and John Lundstrom with Todd Cantwell in front. And attacking trident of Rabea Matondo on the left. Dujon Sterling, interestingly, on the right. And Silva up front, the new signing. Josh, listen, I suppose this is what we suppose the lineup is going to look like, because Dujon Sterling as a right winger is probably not the thing that would immediately come to mind.
No.
So unless Cantwell, I suppose, is playing there and Sterling is in defensive midfield and then Raskin moved to a 10 position, hard to see too many alternatives to this.
No, we'll pause it, and Jonny, give me a flag. I'm hoping that the signal holds up out here in La Manga. So if it doesn't give me a flag, and I'll stop my camera. I'm squinting because the wind's blowing the sprinklers up into the stand. So someone says he looks like I'm on a boat, and I can see with the flag and the kind of water everywhere why that is the case. Paul says, is Sterling actually playing there, or are you just guessing? Of course, guessing, Paul, because we've. I haven't picked the team. I think it'll be more, Jonny, the fact that, the way a lineup is picked, obviously, I think more with Clement, you've got a white triangle on either side. So you have three players on the left-hand side, three players on the right. And it's kind of a common theme with, I guess, teams who play in a rough positional shape. And what I think that means is that there'll probably be three. I think Campbell will be your number 10. I think probably Silva's your number 9. Matondo plays off the left. Dujon Sterling, if you look at his central midfield role, a lot of the time what he's doing is he's moving into that midfield, that right-sided triangle. So at times he might be at the base. What I would expect is it means that James Tavernier is the one who provides width on the right-hand side. Maybe it's going to be that Nico Raskin plays slightly higher on the left and Todd Cantwell on the right with Lundstrom at the base. So it's not going to be, I don't think, Dujon Sterling on the right wing. Maybe this is Rangers trying to find a position for him that gets the best out of him, that's not, again, playing deep with his back to goal, and maybe midfield isn't going to suit him in all components of the game. But he's been one of Rangers' best players yesterday, so yeah, you have to find the role for him, Jonny. As I think we've said a few times, I think there's a question where Dujon Sterling plays going forward. But increasingly, I don't think it's a question of whether he plays. I think in big games, you're going to see him play more often than not. So I don't think he'll be playing on the right wing. I think he'll be playing in that right-sided triangle in some capacity. Probably Lundstrom at the base of midfield. Cantwell is a higher midfielder. Raskin is the kind of number 10. Raskin is the number 8. And Matondo off the left-hand side. So expect it to be two kind of wide triangles and Sterling to be somewhere on that. Obviously, got to put him somewhere in the conventional lineup. So it does look like he's playing right off the striker on the right in that kind of 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, because the other obvious option would be some sort of diamond, Josh. But we've never seen anything from this manager, Philippe Clement, to suggest that the diamond is something that he would persevere with or try. So I know it's pre-season and not pre-season, sorry, it's a mid-season break and there's an opportunity to experiment. But I don't think he's ever kind of touched on anything that would lead you to believe it was in his thinking. But going to be quite interesting to see how they line up. You're certainly getting a bit of stick on Twitter for posting up this lineup, including from the bold Stevie Clifford, who's having none of it. Josh, he thinks, like I suggested, that more likely to see Sterling in the deep midfield role with Raskin push forward and Cantwell on the right. We'll see.
You can clip up my 3-minute monologue and send it to Stevie to
I
save
will do.
me.
Don't worry, I'm going to do that, especially if you're right, because that will be delicious.
We'll see.
Listen, let's just touch on Ridvan, because it's kind of been the big talking point over the last 48 hours, hasn't it? Quite a lot of people suggesting that Ridvan has come on to a game all of a sudden. He was man of the match in the final game before the break. Certainly did okay against Celtic. I don't think he was outstanding or anything, but he kept Dijk and Maida quiet, and that's been something James Tavernier hasn't been able to do at times during previous Old Firm games. So all this talk that seems to be coming out of Italy, and then further highlighted by what we're kind of seeing now, which is kind of these slightly fake journalists on Twitter who are building up mass followings by kind of copying other people's stories and then putting them out in a way that gives them a large Twitter following. And then before you know it, because someone's got 300,000 followers or 500,000 followers, all of a sudden the story is fact. But as anyone who's been watching the Rangers review, we've actually got boots on the ground. And as you said yesterday, Josh, you saw the young Turk 4 times about the training ground. So you rightly said, I watched the video that you had last night with Derek, that it was a bit odd that an imminent transfer for Ridvan Yilmaz was in the offing, given that you personally set eyes on him a mere hour and 30 minutes prior to appearing on the video. And that's been underlined today by the fact that Ridvan is in the starting lineup. Now, sources at Rangers are keeping very tight-lipped to me, and I'm sure are keeping tight-lipped to you with regards to Ridvan and any transfer move. But I don't think you have to be Albert Einstein to work out that if you're playing in a friendly game, you're not imminently about to move to Italy, are you?
Yeah, well, I guess the thinking always would be, Jonny, that if you're about to move, you risk obviously an injury, which is why that doesn't normally happen. Again, I think it's one of these situations where in a transfer window, especially with Twitter now, so much goes on and there's so much noise that a big situation can be created out of very little at points. I think you would say that there's been enough noise in the Ridvan situation. Again, you can look at it from a kind of common sense point of view and how he's performed at Rangers so far, the value that is still in him and it's still in his contract at this point of view. And the fact that he's not been able to nail down a starting spot under any one of the managers, to say that a move away wouldn't be improbable. And obviously every single player has their price. There's movement from Verona in terms of Josh Dijk going out as well. So it's clearly a situation, Jonny, where there's something is going on, has gone on, could go on. But at the moment, you're right, Ridvan's here. He was training yesterday. He's in the starting lineup. That would not suggest that he's about to get on a plane tonight and move to Italy. So I think one to keep an eye on. The January transfer window is notoriously difficult. Clermont obviously wants reinforcements in this window and has one in Silva so far, and likely I think it's the same with Sam Lammers. One going out probably means that one will come in, such as the nature of kind of Rangers' strength and depth, or lack of it in certain areas of this kind of changing system that Clermont has moved to. But yeah, he was here yesterday, he's here today. We're all going to see him play in less than an hour. So it's one to keep an eye on, and I personally feel, I know Stevie had a column on it last night, Jonny, but I kind of feel that it almost feels like it would be a strange time to let Ridvan go unless Rangers do have a left back coming in who is going to solve all their issues, because I think it's a situation they could manage until the end of the season when Barisic is out of contract. Then you can probably make a long-term decision on Ridvan, whether or not he is your long-term option in that position, because he's not had the kind of games over a sustained period of time to show that so far. If they have a better option just now to get you through until the end of the season, then maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what Clermont wants to move towards, or perhaps it's a situation where Rangers need that money to reinvest elsewhere. But again, a lot of the noise coming out of Italy have suggested that it could actually be a loan move. So certainly one of the stories of the transfer window so far, but as far as we know, he's here today. He's about to play a game, and we'll see how he does at left back.
Yeah, loads of speculation swirling around, but you're always going to get as assuredly factual stuff as we can possibly deliver here at the Rangers Review. You're always going to get the information, and we've always got bodies on the ground, as you can see with Josh being there. Another thing that interests me in terms of this lineup is Rabea Matondo, Josh. If anyone is going to be able to understand what Matondo can bring, it's surely a manager that was in Belgium for the season prior to the one where he arrived at Ibrox, because Rabea Matondo arrived on the back of an excellent season. And he performed very, very well indeed over there in the Belgian league. I think it was 11 goals and a fair slew of assists to boot. In terms of what he can do, we've heard Clement say that he can feature as a second striker, he can feature as a wide man. Do you think this is a sign with him starting in this game here that he can be a big player for Clement, someone that can make a genuine impact and more of an impact than he has so far in his time with Rangers? Of course, we know he's been a bit unlucky with injury because he started the season very well indeed. And prior to picking up that knock that kept him out for a couple of months, he was starting to look like he could be a player that could give Rangers something different.
Yeah, I think Matondo's the story of his career so far, and it's not a unique story, is that he's got potential and he's got unique assets, but he's probably not been able to put it all together for whatever reason, whether that be decision making. Michael Beale spoke about that when he was at the club, whether it be his final action, whether it be using pace effectively. I think Abdallah Sima is a really interesting example of someone who is unbelievably quick, but he's got the movement to match and can run behind defences and curve his runs. You saw that with the goal away at Hearts in a way that and maybe others with pace have not been able to. Matondo at the start of the season, I think we saw, you're right, he's unfortunate with that injury, and he's had knee injuries kind of throughout his professional career. And that year in Cercle Bruges, we did a piece with the assistant now manager at Cercle Bruges, Miron Muslik, who knows Matondo very well, worked with him really closely during his time at the club, and he gave him some fascinating insight into how they got that kind of year of best performances out of him. And a lot of that, I think, was to do with the space that he was playing in. Cercle Bruges are quite a distinctive team, high pressing team. They don't really play with wingers, it's minimum width. And that allowed Matondo to do what he is really good at, even when he's maybe not been in form, which is that he's so quick that when he's running at you in space, he's a real asset. As his former manager said, this is a Premier League profile. He just needs to be able to piece it together. And I think at the start of the season, we did start to see that Jonny, his impact off the bench away at St Johnstone when he scores that goal. Obviously, PSV, but also in other games as well. But it was also always when there was space. It was always when he was coming into a game that was stretched. And normally because Rangers weren't playing very well and they were only 1-0 up in a Ross County or St Johnstone or Livingston at home at Ibrox, when it was 1-0 up until 75 minutes and Rangers actually won the game 4-0. The reason that Matondo played well was he was coming into a game where he could run and transition up the pitch. You remember Kieran Dowell's fantastic goal in that Livingston game. It all comes from Matondo running the length of the pitch to take Rangers forward. Rangers don't have that game state very often, I think, especially when they're a dominant team. So the challenge, I think, then was always going to be for him, you've shown people what you can do. I know it was a little while ago now and he's had those injury issues and it's taken him time to come back from that, but can you then go and do it consistently from the start of games? And I think to do that consistently from the start of games, he needs to mature as a winger who can kind of control games a little bit more, who can adapt to games when there is less space. And that's why his substitute appearance away at Aberdeen, where he won the corner that Rangers would get the penalty from, and also created that great chance for Sam Lammers, the header at the front post, which he headed into the keeper. I thought that was a step in the right direction, because instead of always trying to cut in on his right foot, Jonny, he was hitting the byline, trying to attack the space. And I think showing attributes of a winger who, again, can use that pace effectively against a deeper block. And that's what Clement said, asked him about it at a press conference, and he actually said he's someone who can help us break the wall, but he now needs to go and do that in the games that matter. And you'd imagine, as you say, that this training camp will be a really good opportunity for him to try and work with Clement, who's seen his qualities firsthand, who's lost derby matches when Matondo's been the standout player in the Bruges derby. He's had the time to work with him, but now Matondo's been here for a long amount of time. You'd imagine that this is a really defining few months coming up for him in his Rangers career, especially, Jonny, because Abdallah Sima's off to the Africa Cup of Nations for a while.
Yeah, world's greatest DJ asking, is that Derek singing in the background? I believe that's actually Tom Waits, and it's making me want to say, where Wallace at? to you, Josh, but you
don't know
won't
what
get that Wire reference.
No.
What's playing there in the background is the theme tune to The Wire, Way Down in the Hole. Now, some people will know that, and some people won't. And I know for a fact that you wouldn't, because that's way before you.
It's now Lewis Capaldi playing in the background, so I'm not.
Right. It was Way Down in the Hole, which is a fantastic sort of bluesy song. Listen, there's one other sort of element to this game that we should just quickly touch on, which is Silva playing up front. You sat down with him yesterday. What did you make of him as a guy? People can obviously go to the Rangers Review and read the interview there, Josh. There's quite a lot of insight and quite an interesting take on him, and he's got a lot to say for himself. Seems like a confident lad. What did you make of him?
Yeah, I agree with. I think what stood out is that he doesn't really feel he has a point to prove, and I guess that comes into the fact that yes, he's when a player moves for 36 million when there's 18, I think it was, Jonny, then you're going to have a lot of pressure hanging over your head, and that's why I think parallels were drawn with the fact that when Amad Diallo came to Rangers, it was a similar price tag. I think the difference is that Silva's a few years older. He played a lot of football and had 2 good loan spells last season, and he feels like a relatively mature head. Again, only spent 15 minutes in this company, but he seemed like someone who had quite a lot of actually life and football experience, which is true because Rangers are his 5th club of a relatively short career. He's only 21. I think the most interesting thing that stood out to me, Jonny, was that he said he's not the phrase he used was he's not a really, really number 9 or not a number 9, which I translated to mean he's not an out-and-out number 9. He said he's not someone who wants to be static in the box. And actually what was interesting was he said when he had those conversations with Philippe Clement about how he sees football in the final third, it really matched up. He said, Clement wants me to bring more dynamic elements to Rangers attack, and he spoke about wanting to interchange with players, occupy different positions, sometimes attacking from the left-hand side as he did with PSV last season, sometimes moving deeper, playing 1-2s with players, but not someone who's just going to add the finishing touches onto moves. Now, that begs the question, okay, is he going to be what Rangers really need? And what Rangers clearly need is someone to put the ball at the back of the net routinely, and they have done for a while. As mentioned, I still think Danilo can be that for them, but I don't think he's going to be back anytime soon. So I think that also informs a little bit more about the rest of the window. I think we might actually see Silva play off the left-hand side, off the right-hand side at points, off the number 10, off the striker in the number 10 position as a kind of supporting second striker, depending a bit like Abdallah Sima has, depending on how Rangers line up in different occasions. It looks like he'll be the number 9 today, and I'm sure he will be able to do that at points as well, but just give a different interpretation of the role, maybe dropping in a little bit more. We've seen Cyril Dessers do that at points today, so really looking forward to seeing how he plays, because he had a few training sessions with his teammates, and I spoke to Connor Goldson. I think that was yesterday. It's been a busy couple of days, so it could have been a couple of days ago. He said that, speaking about his kind of infectious pressing at the top end of the pitch, which will be important as well. It's such an important component of being a modern striker, being able to kind of lead the defensive side from the front as well. So intrigued to see how he links up with Cantwell. I presume it'll be Matondo on the left. Maybe, again, touching on the Sterling topic and others, it'll be quite a fluid Rangers team today because of the role that Silva's going to play up top.
Yeah, got a message from Ian Brown here asking if the game's on YouTube. Yes, it is indeed on Rangers YouTube channel. So once we're done here, get across there and you can catch the game, which kicks off in 40 minutes time at 3 p.m. Now, Josh, just to touch on the general camp and how it's been over there, what's your impressions, basically? You spent a lot of time around the players and within the actual training section yesterday, but you've also been there now the entire time the team has been out there, because you went out a day early from the rest of the media. What's been your impressions of it?
Yeah, it's a really nice place, Jonny. Not quite. I think it was 20 degrees last week. It has been about 17, 16, so warmer than home. I gather from my wife, who, when I told her it wasn't warm, she said that it was compared to Glasgow, in effect. So, listen, I think they've had, a few days already. They've got a few more coming up. Vital, again, Goldson was saying it's just vital to have that time away from things and time to really spend as a group, to not have to worry about competitive football, obviously to allow the manager to bed his ideas. And so we'll see today what the performance is like. We'll see on Tuesday as well. I expect it to be a cold night against FC Copenhagen at Ibrox on Tuesday night, and Dumbarton if that game goes ahead. But I'm sure these camps are always meant to be beneficial, Jonny, and yeah, interested. We'll speak to Philippe Clement after the game today, so we'll get a bit of insight into how he's found the whole experience being out away with his team, away from the kind of day-to-days of competitive football for the first time.
Yeah, indeed. Just before you go, listen, I think you should give another plug. You've got a pretty exciting interview coming on Monday and Tuesday. So for anyone who's not aware of what's coming to the Rangers Review, just give us an outline of your 40-minute sit-down with the Rangers captain.
Yeah. We've hopefully people have enjoyed the coverage so far. Jonny tried to vary it, do some broadcast stuff, obviously, which we did with Goldson. Had that sit down with some other members of the media with Silva yesterday as well. But then we were lucky enough to spend that time speaking with James Tavernier and covering a real range of topics. We've got two sections for people. We've got one where we watched some of his famous goals, and he really explained. And we'll go into more detail on Monday and Tuesday in the briefing when the pieces are out, and we'll break it down for people. But the first section kind of focuses on captaincy, leadership, growth, regrets at Rangers, hopes at Rangers, a real kind of scene setter of how he would sum up 9 years at the club, and reflecting on recent things like the League Cup, the European run, talks about the Europa League final, loads of interesting details, relationship with John Gregg, hopes for the futures. And then the second part tried to do something a little bit different and break down a few of his memorable goals, and then talk about the emotions around that, but also his style, how he attacks the box, why he's not a striker, which he'll address a comment we get every single day, but what that role at right back actually allows him to do, how his role as a right back has evolved. So fascinating detail that I'm sure people wouldn't really have heard before from him, and he was really generous with his time, and I found a really good person to interview, and obviously really, really interesting. It's not often you get to sit down and interview the Rangers captain. So yeah, that's coming on Monday and Tuesday. If people have not subscribed, then obviously always encourage them to do so. But in terms of pieces coming up, I'm sure that's one of the more exciting ones we'll do, Jonny. And yeah, as mentioned, Derek and I will go into greater depth on Monday and Tuesday about it.
Yeah, so just for anyone who's wondering in terms of clarity, the team is obviously playing today, as we know. Then tomorrow there will be recovery and more training, more sessions. I don't think the players are really out there for a jolly, that's for sure. Everything I've heard is that it's been a pretty tough, hard-going few days. And they're actually training again on Monday, Josh, aren't they, before they come back? So you'll be well on your way home, and they will be still out there in La Manga. So they get home, I think, somewhere around evening time on Monday, having had a further training session out there. So it really has been a lot of training packed into quite a short time.
Yeah, it has been, Jonny. I'm about to get popped out of my seat here, so I'm going to have to bid everyone farewell.
We'll call it a day, right?
The press box, but we'll speak to everyone after coverage on social media throughout the game, Jonny, and we'll also have hopefully some words with Philippe Clement after the game. So keep tuned.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for that, Josh. You go and enjoy the game. Thanks to everyone who's joined us today for our little podcast, and we will catch up with you after we've seen the 90 minutes of action. Cheers.